And what really blows my mind about this, I have a lot to learn about the technicalities, but it is the caliber of people that are speaking on these topics alongside Craig, even listening to Craig, um, and what he's saying. So it's like it's people with so many PhDs and these rich backgrounds and also, you know what I mean? So these are the kinds of people that are like, wow, what Craig Wright is saying it just makes sense. It's brilliant. So I think it's a sign that, we're finally getting the attention of the right people now.
Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallet, blockchain, stablecoins, MetaNet, the evolution of money. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin today, but what exactly is it? Learn the basics from experts. Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Bitcoin 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Today we have Rebecca Ligero joining us. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Ligero?
It's Ligero, but you were very close.
Well, I'm happy to have you on the show today, Rebecca. And I guess I really want to start things off with everyone really may know you as the beautiful and talented interviewer slash reporter at CoinGeek. But I'm curious if you could kind of fill us all in on how did you get started in reporting?
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. I'm a big fan of yours too. So this is really a pleasure for me. So how did I get started in reporting? That actually comes down to one single person, and that is actually Calvin Ayre. My background is not journalism or reporting or anything like this in terms of my education. My degree is in psychology, of all things. But I stumbled into the online gambling industry many years back in 2005, which is where I met Calvin when he was involved with his online gambling brand, Bodog. And I really respected the brand. And I said to him, when I met him at his Bodog conference, in fact, which he used to have way, way, way back in the day, in the mid 2000s, I said, if you ever have, a job opportunity, I'd be really interested in working for your company. And so at the time, there wasn't anything that was suited for me. But fast forward 4 years later, and he called me up and he said, I am going to be starting a media site. But this media site was focused on the online gambling industry. And it was called calvinair.com. It still exists, but we don't publish anything on it anymore. And he's like, I want you to be the face of it, the video reporter, going to events and things. And I was like, Calvin, I don't do video. I don't do this kind of thing. I can do articles, but I've never done interviews or anything like this. And he's like, you'll be good at it. Just, you've got the personality for it. And you have a deep background in the online gambling space. So people trust you, you have a network, you'll be fine. Just go out there and do it.
Right.
So that is actually how it started.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Baptism by fire.
So you started off with a degree in psychology, and then you just randomly went to one of these events. Like what was the thought process there? Were you interested in like you were just like, I'm going to wake up and go to one of these conventions one day, and then you met the guy that helped you move into a new career?
Yeah, well, there were a few more steps in between there. My original plan when I was getting my undergraduate degree in psychology was that I would go on and get a master's and PhD and become a therapist or something like this. But to be perfectly honest, and actually it's kind of a timely matter now, the cost of getting these degrees was so high, and the salary level for a therapist, a psychiatrist is different if you have a medical degree, but the average salary was quite, I don't want to say low, but when you do the math, I was like, man, that's a tough slog. So I put that on hold and I just started looking for jobs. And I came across one, an amazing company that still exists today. It's Casino City is the company name, and they have a website, onlinecasinoscity.com. And they just happened to be in the Boston area, which is where I was living at the time, which is actually where I am sitting right now at my parents' house. Normally, I'm based in London, for those that don't know. And I went into the job interview, and it was for, oh my God, I'm trying to think of the title. It was like online account manager or something like this. And they just wanted some young blood in the company, I think. And I was looking after the advertising space on the website, which was essentially an affiliate site for the online gambling space. It was directory, and they listed all the online gambling casinos in existence. So the job I was applying for was to actually build relationships with the online gambling companies and then advertise them on the website and collect revenue for my company. So I had no interest in gambling. I still don't. I don't gamble. But the job was, right around the corner from where I was living, and the people were really, really nice. I still talk to them to this day. And so I entered the online gambling industry that way. And Bodog was one of the online gambling operators that advertised on the website. So then this company sent me to the Bodog event. And
okay.
but I was going to, yeah. So I was going to lots of gambling conferences at the time, via this company. And what I loved so much about the industry was just the people in it. And I think this was one of the reasons why I absolutely adore working with CoinGeek and the BSV community, because you do see the same people over and over, and they become like family and good friends and this sort of thing. But that's how I came across the online gambling world.
That's awesome. As I understand it too, is that how you got into like knowing not only Calvin but Jimmy and Stefan? If I remember, I think you did an interview with Stefan a while back ago, and you were talking about how you both had that kind of background in
Yep.
gambling.
Yeah.
So maybe you could go into that a little bit for us. How did you meet everybody? Like, how did the gang come together, and what was your part in it?
Yeah, it's really cool, actually. I've been working with some of the people in the BSV blockchain space for many, many years now. And quite a few of the, maybe you can call them leaders in the space, they do have a background in the online gambling world. And perhaps that's because in the early 2000s, this was a really innovative, exciting space based on technology and all of this. So people that are forward thinking could see that there was huge opportunity there. And when I say people that are forward thinking, I mean Calvin and Stefan and even Craig. So Jimmy was actually a lawyer that dealt with online gambling litigation. I don't remember. He's probably going to kill me when he sees this. But he he had a deep background in understanding what was going on with online gambling companies in the law. So he was working with Bodog at one point, and so I actually was on a bunch of email threads with Jimmy when I had joined Calvin for CalvinAir.com in 2009, and Calvin was still involved with the Bodog brand a little bit.
Mm.
So that's the story with Jimmy. So that was, I don't know, maybe early 2010s or something like that.
Wow. So a long time.
Yes. Yeah. And but going way back, I mean, Calvin was really the first one I met in 05, and Fawn as well, who was working closely with Calvin at the time. And Fawn is leading up the team that manages CoinGeek and a bunch of other entities in our space. Another lovely person, Tom, who's involved with CoinGeek. For those that have worked with Tom before, I've known him as well since the mid 2000s. And Stefan, I met because he used to manage the IT department. I believe he was the CTO. Sorry, technology. So his chief technology officer for the Bodog brand in London, or in Europe, for some time. So that was early 2000s as well, mid 2010s as well. I mean, so I knew him with his online gambling hat in the beginning. I know, it's crazy.
So I'm thinking, okay, so you were in the gambling, you were part of this kind of team and the gambling, everybody's kind of mixing and mingling, talking to each other and working towards advancing this industry at the time. And then all of a sudden, Satoshi really comes in and changes the game for everybody. And I know Stefan came on the show and told us about like the whole background about how it all got started and how it evolved over a period of time. But I'm curious, like what that looked like from your point of view, being that you were around and watching all of these things unfurl. Um, so what did that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild, honestly. So I actually had already started studying a little bit the Bitcoin world before Stefan introduced Craig to Calvin. So that was
Interesting.
2016 or something. Yeah, because Calvin noted that this technology was going to be quite disrupted. And I think the attention that we had in the gambling industry back then, and I'm talking about maybe 2012,
Right.
was strictly, BTC, and it was payments. It was Roger Ver going around and helping people open up wallets, and back then there weren't so many users on the network, so BTC it was quick and the fees were not high. So you could send a little bit of BTC and it would arrive in the receiver's wallet, like this. So online gambling companies were like, oh, hell yeah. But to be quite honest, a lot of the shady operators were like, hell yeah. So I think, yeah. So anyway, so we were studying the Bitcoin world to see where that was going to be going. So Calvin already had his radar out, because he was like, okay, this is quite just something new. So we at calvinair.com started doing interviews with people in the space that were coming to the gambling conferences. One of them, oh my God, Max Kaiser was one of them, Brock Pierce. I mean, I don't even know if I should be saying this stuff. No, I'm joking, but but this is before all the craziness happened. But they were coming to our events. Roger, oh my gosh, so many of the guys that are now getting unveiled as doing, some pretty shady things, they were coming to gambling conferences and talking to us about this is going to change the world, and you can do your own thing, you don't have to deal with all this regulation bullshit and blah blah blah. And so anyhow, so I was doing some interviews with these guys and learning about the tech. Meanwhile, Stefan, I think, he'd left the Bodog brand, and I absolutely would adore seeing him and around and all of this. So I know he and Calvin would see each other when they were in the same city, and so I would see Stefan. But then all of a sudden, Calvin's like, "Yeah, there's this guy I really want you to meet. His name's Craig." Craig, right? He's Satoshi, and I'm like, "What?" I mean, this is like way in the beginning before
Right.
anyone knew who he was. Oh my God. Yeah, and I went to go to Vancouver, I think it was, for some holiday,
Mm.
and to visit Calvin and some others, Vaughn, some others that live in the area. And Calvin's like, "This is great. Craig is here. Craig, right? Let's go for dinner. I want you to meet him." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Like this guy, I'm like so curious because I had heard whispers, around like we've come across Satoshi. This was way before anything was public. And back then, Craig was much less comfortable in social situations. He's
Interesting.
really good now, but I mean, it was just Calvin and I and Craig, and then Craig's wife was there too. Um, and I straight away got along with him very well, but it was because I was introduced, via Calvin, and he knew,
Mm.
and I think he knew that I was on his side from the start, right?
Mm.
But so that's how I met Craig. Wow, it's a long time ago now. And then
It's
slowly,
yeah.
yeah, all these things started unfolding. It's crazy.
It's crazy to think that like Roger Ver and everybody was kind of meeting up all at the same time, and there's like a ethereal thing that all of these people that we know so well today were coming together for a completely different thing other than just Bitcoin. And
Yeah,
that it was the gambling industry pulling everybody together. That's kind of crazy to think
yeah, it's
about.
wild.
But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about like where okay, so you met I'm sorry, hold on one second.
No, I
I'm
know it's
still
a
trying.
long, it's like a very convoluted, crazy story.
I'm just
Yeah,
thinking about it. It's like, yeah, because there's so many, like all of these people are being outed now. Like,
yeah,
um, like Brock Pierce is not a very liked guy, nowadays. So you think about like all of the people that were involved back then that were champions for Bitcoin, kind of
yeah,
lost that focus. And then they also knew they had to have known about Craig back then, and that he was the real Satoshi. And it's like, where did the snap happen that changed everybody's mind? And you know, and of
yeah.
course we've heard stories from Kurt, but
Mhm.
what would you
And the
say?
one thing I will say is that back then, at least when I came across these guys, they were nothing but lovely, honestly. And I think back then there was a different, the industry was different back then. When I say the industry, Bitcoin, blockchain, that whole world, it was not so dirty, I guess. I don't know. It was exciting and it was everyone trying to help everyone. And it was like, welcome to our event. And this is how you use this tech and this is what it can do. And it was really, really a fun place to be. And I remember saying to one of my cameramen at the time, I actually should, I'll send him a message after this and be like, remember when I said, I was like, I think that Bitcoin's my calling. I was like, I think that this is the world that I'm going to end up in, because it was like this fresh energy entrepreneur. You know what I mean? It was just so, and like Brock was always lovely to chat with, and he was really into the social gaming space as well. So I think he was able to see that this tech would be able to change an industry like that, for example. So regardless of the decisions they made and things they did later down the line, they did, they had a vision that this was going to do something amazing. And I don't know whether it's money or whatever happened to change people's paths, but they were amazing to be around back then. So insightful, so friendly, so welcoming. Yeah, it really changed a lot, I would say.
It is really crazy to think about the changes that were made there, because I know like a lot of people are on the fence about like how they feel about people like Roger Ver, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know. And then I have a buddy that who got burned really bad from the whole Mount Gox thing, and so like his opinion on Roger isn't very good. But it's
yeah,
interesting, we've heard all the narratives of the bad side about this, but at the same time it's interesting to hear that these are regular people. They are, they're still good people regardless of the decisions that were made. And I guess that brings a little bit of happy good feelings back about the whole situation too, so it's interesting to hear it from that side. But I'm curious,
yeah.
what was it specifically about Bitcoin that when you were listening to, say, Satoshi, or just thinking about how this was going to disrupt like the gambling industry or even other industries, what was it specifically that got you thinking like this technology is something that I want to champion into the future? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I had the moment that I told you about earlier, which is when I said to my cameraman, I think
Uh,
this industry is my calling. And interestingly enough, that was before that Calvin was involved with CoinGeek. So this was like before I was, God, I'm about to use a word and I don't know if I should use it, but forced into it. And I'll explain what I mean in a second. It's totally not how I feel. But I mean, the reality is that calvinair.com was shut down, and it was like, you need to come over to CoinGeek now, which is fine because I was. It's like the greatest thing, honestly. I'm so in love with the work that I'm doing. It's amazing. But back then, I think what I loved so much about it was the types of people that get involved with a particular industry and the excitement and the vibe in the room. And I think that is what initially really hooked me into the online gambling world, is just back in 2005. This was like the most disruptive space ever, the online gambling world. It was like they were the first movers with affiliate marketing and with mobile devices and this sort of thing. And it was just so much excitement. And I think now it's a bit different, that industry. It's much more maybe regulated. I don't know. Maybe people are older. I don't know. But the Bitcoin space, everyone is very young and they were ready to go out there and change the world, right? You're not going to change the world with an online gambling website. You're going to entertain,
yeah.
but so there was a different vibe there. Um, but the vibe reminded me of when I first entered the gambling space. But I think what really excites me now that I've made the transition from the calvinair.com world, which was online gambling, to CoinGeek world, which is the BSV ecosystem, is that I really do think it'll change the world, honest to God. And this is what we talk about in the office. And we're like, oh my God, when people look back on like, how did this all start and all this, like we were there, right? We were part of it, helping to spread the word. I know that sounds cheesy, but when you're in it, you would know, I'm sure, what I'm talking about. Like really, really a nice vibe, and it's exciting.
I definitely understand the vibe, the enthusiasm, the energy that you get. I haven't been to a Quinky conference yet, but I was able to
Oh
go
my
to the
God,
Bitcade event in Miami.
Miami.
And the energy around just getting to meet Kurt and Patrick and Alex and everybody and Robert DeLisser and whatnot, Rory Zimmerman, being amongst kindred individuals that were so passionate about Bitcoin, I can only imagine that as being like a fraction of what you experienced in the very beginning. And
Yeah.
so that was enough to really invigorate me and invigorate that passion with me about Bitcoin. So I can only imagine being like one of the very first individuals to really help champion this. I'm curious though, aside from like say the gambling industry or the banking industries, what type of businesses, corporations, or industries do you believe Bitcoin is really going to be the most disruptive in?
Oh gosh, there's so many answers to that, I think. Because I do have the luxury of traveling to lots of different events on behalf of CoinGeek and listening to these talks and listening to Craig and Jimmy and all of these guys give presentations to audience that can benefit from the tech. And I think it can go everywhere from these, you mentioned the gambling space, obviously, in applications and things like this, gaming, esports. But I think like the advertising world, online advertising, that's quite a broad umbrella. I think you chatted a lot about this with Alex Moon. I mean, like I said, the real obvious one for me that I think you already mentioned was the online gambling world, or the gambling world, in terms of solutions that nChain has created, such as Kenze, which is really just data taking advantage of the timestamp server. Just it's literally keeping everything in a ledger where it cannot be manipulated, and where regulators and interested parties or approved parties can look at data and confirm that it actually is what you're saying it is. So that really can apply to seriously like any industry. Advertising, being able to do this, pay per minute, pay per article, pay per movie or
Mm.
street, this sort of thing with micropayments is just amazing. Because since I've been here in Boston, watching TV in the US and in England, I don't think it's as bad. The commercials on regular TV here are ridiculous. It's every two, like pharmaceutical. But anyway, I'm so I'm like, oh my God, we need a model where it's like, it just can't be like this. This is ridiculous. Nobody is going to pay the cable company for regular TV anymore. It's ridiculous. So I think it's totally set to disrupt the way we think of advertising and do advertising, social media too, which we're already making some progress there, which is amazing. But I find that social media is irritating me lately as well, with sort of the spam accounts or these scammers that copy your account and people think it's you and it's not. And, I guess the way blockchain can help with that is if you have this universal ID. I know Phil Runyon talks a lot about that. But it's seriously, it can touch everything we're doing. So I feel like I can sit here and talk to you for hours about this, because I hear it all these amazing things it can do. It's really refreshing to speak with someone like you that understands that this is really exciting tech. Because when friends of mine, or even just people in the area that I live in the London area, they know that I work in blockchain or Bitcoin, it's still the same question every time. I see them in the restaurant or on the street or whatever, and they're like, "Oh yeah, what should I invest in?" And I'm like, "Oh God, oh God, like here we go." Or, "Oh, should I buy an NFT?" Like, oh. So I think that for sure, and I've been educating my family about this since I've been here. That that there's just so much more to it than that. It's just, I don't even want to get into that conversation because I'm like, that's a different world, different industry, even what you're talking about. But it is this. I'm so happy with what I'm doing because it is really exciting and there is a really bright future to it. It's not, a bubble that's going to burst in a couple of years or whatever.
So, as somebody who kind of gets to see behind the scenes of everything that's going on at CoinGeek and the conferences and whatnot, what are some of the most exciting things that you've seen kind of come to like? What were some of the exciting things about the Dubai conference that you got to see, as far as like corporations and or individuals seeing this and being like, oh, I can use this technology, blockchain, to disrupt my own industry, and seeing like light bulbs go off? What were some of the most amazing moments that you got to see watching people have that kind of aha moment?
My role at the conference was to interview a lot of the speakers. So most of the people I interfaced with were already involved in the industry in some way, and or knew a bit about it because they agreed to speak at the show. So I didn't have much face time with new that were wowed by how amazing the technology is, I'm sure. But what I did notice is that coming out of the conference after the fact, there are all sorts of partnerships that happened, and I love that because I'm a total people person. I love when people connect and get along and share ideas and have a good time and all of this. One example is Zetly. They are a sports engagement, and I know that they met the guys from Haste, and then at the Dubai conference, and they were like, "This is amazing." I actually have a piece coming out on this partnership that they've made with Haste and also Pouchess and a couple of others in this space. And I think it was the micropayments that were really super exciting about that. For a company like that. So I think that, in my opinion, probably micropayments wow people the most because
Right.
they're unaware of being able to transact with such low fees and at such scale. And the second thing is in regards to regulation and the focus that a lot of the businesses and the leaders, or all the businesses and leaders, I should say, in the BSB blockchain space have on working with regulators, making sure things are done by the books, by the law, that are going to stand up in the courtroom. And I think that makes the BSV blockchain ecosystem really stand out. I don't want to say from every other blockchain out there, but from the vast majority, I'd say. So it makes enterprise level businesses and governments and things like this much more comfortable to have conversations, I think, with solutions built on that blockchain, because they can rest assured that it's being done in a way that is by the books.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting to hear about people making those connections. I like to hear that. That's personally what I try to do to help kind of behind the scenes, aside from promote education and or information, right? But I'm also curious. There was a lot of things that were spoken about at the Dubai conference, and IPv6 was one of those. And I can't quite grasp exactly what's going on. It's been a busy past couple of months, so I'm curious if there's anything about IPv6 that you could share with us and kind of maybe explain, or what do you know about it, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I had to literally look it up on the internet and be like, what's IPv6? Oh my God. It was actually a JAD, Internet Protocol version 6. Um, he was like, Beck, you gotta do some reading. No, I'm joking. He helped explain a lot of it to me. But the reason why I got, because I've been attending the IEEE events on behalf of CoinGeek and doing interviews with Latif and Craig and others that are there, on why this working together protocols is really exciting. And one of the things I find amazing is that IPv6 has been around a really long time. And if you Google it, you'll find articles from a long time ago that show up weird. Because I thought that it was something new.
New.
And it really just, yeah, I mean, to boil it all down, it just obviously there you can have so many so many IP addresses, which is quite limited with IPv4. But I think synergy is it's all about it's end to end. And that is exactly what Craig was talking about in the white paper, right? So it's like the Bitcoin, I mean, will be the plumbing that enables IPv6 to actually come to life. And the other really cool thing too is that I think it's the 404 error. I can't remember, but it's the error on the. I know this is so. Craig has had to correct me on this several times. When the internet, when it first came out and all of this, the idea was to have payments going through the internet, but the infrastructure was never built for it. So if there's some error that shows up, I know I could do interviews on this, but it's hard for me to explain it.
That's okay.
But anyway, it solves that issue. So using BSV blockchain with IPv6 will enable all of these peer-to-peer transactions just like this. And it'll bring to life what the vision was for IPv6 back then, and it just couldn't happen back then. So now it's just going to change the whole way that online happens, everything on the internet. So I think that these kinds of conversations are like, and what really blows my mind about this, I have a lot to learn about the technicalities, but it is the caliber of people that are speaking on these topics alongside Craig, even listening to Craig, and what he's saying. So it's like, it's people with so many PhDs and these rich backgrounds and also, you know what I mean? So these are the kinds of people that are like, wow, what Craig Wright is saying it just makes sense. It's brilliant. So I think it's a sign that, we're finally getting the attention of the right people now that actually understand how brilliant Craig is. And it's like, a lot of the things that he says, I'm not going to understand. And it's just, I'm very good friends with Craig. He knows where my limits are when we talk. But when you listen to these guys, I have dinners with them, right? I'll go for dinner with them afterwards and I'm listening to them talk. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And then at these events, these IPv6 events, Craig also usually does a side event or something like this where he's speaking to a room full of students. And so the students are in there feverishly taking notes and asking all sorts of incredible questions, really intelligent questions after Craig has finished talking. This is just a different planet, than what we're hearing about. With I know some of Kurt's reports from some of the crypto conferences and things like this, where people are on stage, like, yelling like to the moon and blah, 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 like, this sort of stuff. Yeah. You've got Craig talking with students all over the world, in India, in Morocco, in Dublin, all over, about how blockchain is going to power this world of IPv6. So I'm not really giving you an explanation of how it all works, but I would love to recommend watching one of Craig's presentations from one of these conferences. He presents in a way where you can digest it. It's like 30 minutes to an hour, and it makes so much sense. It's just like light bulbs going off left and right. Crazy.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll listen to Craig and I'll watch his videos and I'll be like, that was a little in over my head. I'm gonna have to rewatch that back a couple of times to really digest what he's saying. But hey, it's I used to be part of that background that was all like, oh, to the moon and this, that, and the other thing. And all it takes is for somebody to show you, hey, like, look at what the technology is actually capable of. Look at what this is being utilized for. And then look at the differences over here with Craig and what he's trying to accomplish. And it's like night and day. So like you said, Craig's over here trying to educate people and being super philosophical and all the right words, and then over here you've got a bunch of people just screaming at each other like, oh, this is disruptive and whatnot. And it's clear to say like which side is on a better path, in my opinion. But it gets a little frustrating. It gets a little frustrating because it still feels like that other side is just so much louder that they're quote
Mhm.
unquote winning, or they say that they're quote unquote winning. And so
Uh,
what are your thoughts on that? When do you think we're,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think it does feel like to us that it is that way, that they're winning and the other side is bigger and all of this. But I think when you really look at the world as a whole, when you get out of the Twitter bubble or the like the blockchain crypto world bubble and just go to the regular person on the street from a global level, I mean, they don't even know what blockchain is, you know? So I think that there is this group, and especially Twitter is so dangerous in this way because also we all know that Twitter feeds us up what we know we're going to click on and look at and all of this. So my whole Twitter feed, all that it is Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto. That's it. But if I logged on, under my sister or whatever, she would be seeing something totally different. It'd be about, health, nutrition, or whatever. That's the world that she's
Absolutely.
in. Yeah. And so I think it is frustrating because things happen, for example, where if you have Craig speaking in an event and then a troll sees this and, on Twitter and then starts contacting the organizer, that's where it gets really frustrating because you're like, oh, come on. But if you zoom back and look at it from here, and I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to go to some of these events like in Morocco. And I did not go to the event in India, but I think you can see the level of excitement around these guys, and they don't even care about how much BTC is or about they don't even look at Ethereum because they can't do what they want to do with Ethereum. So they, it's I think that once you get out of the bubble, it's a bit more positive, maybe. But it is hard, and
Yeah.
it requires a lot of self control to not fall into a deep dark hole, being like, oh my god, this is just never going to happen. It's never going to work. But for someone who goes to all these events, and I'm really right in the thick of it, there really is a lot of bright side. But people love to just human nature is to focus on the negativity, which is what we've seen the last few years, right? With the whole situation that the world's been under for a couple of years now. I won't even say it in case they tag this video and pull it off. But anyway, that there really is a lot of really amazing things happening. Every event I go to, every person I interview, anyone I come across, they're so excited. And these organizers, these professors, these universities, they're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Craig is brilliant. They don't even talk about him being Satoshi. They're just like, this man is brilliant. And he is. If you spend time with him, honestly, Brittany, like he can talk to you about anything. So when I have time with him, it's like we don't speak about the technicalities of Bitcoin, but I can talk to him about, I'm trying to think of an example. He just knows so much stuff. It's crazy. Did you see there was an interview of him with a really amazing host who's so funny? I think Italian American guy. Oh my God, real personality. I can't remember his name. Big following this guy has. And he had a painting in the background. And when Craig finished the interview with this guy, Craig was like, hey, is that so and so and so and so and so and so in the painting? And the guy was like, how did you know that? Like, just it was like a bunch of historical figures, just little things like this. And you're like, this man is another level. It's
I mean,
crazy.
how many PhDs and everything does he have at this point? I mean, it's
It's ridiculous.
on some level,
Yeah.
you have to think to yourself, well, I guess it's not that surprising knowing, you know, you have to be intelligent to get one PhD, let alone several. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too, you mentioned that sometimes Craig's presentations you have to watch a few times, but more recently, I think he's been doing a really good job with delivering presentations that are easier to follow for people that might not be as deep into the spaces he's used to talking to. And I'm sure he's worked on that because when I first met him in, I mentioned when I met him in Vancouver with Calvin and all of this, I would interview him and it was like he was going off all these different directions, way too technical. I had absolutely zero idea what he was talking about. But also, that's because I didn't have a background yet. I hadn't studied anything. I hadn't read the white paper. I hadn't done anything back then. So after going through a process of educating myself, it became much easier to then watch, his 30-minute presentation. So it's kind of two things happening. Craig becoming a really good presenter and me learning, or actually taking the time to study, to have a background in that.
So what are like some how did you keep up with him during that first interview then if you had a very limited understanding, how are you able to keep up?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that just comes with experience of being on camera interviewing people. You just kind of learn the tricks of like how to like ask a follow-up question that isn't too far out there. I mean, what I used to do, um when there was a point in time, I didn't mention this earlier, but when I was doing work for both calvinair.com and CoinGeek. This is before CoinGeek really built their production team, and it was only me, which is just insane to think about. And this was actually when it was like BCH days. This was way back in the day. So I was asked by our video team, can you go to these blockchain events and interview people? And I was like, oh my God, like I don't know anything. So I would listen to a presentation and jot down a couple of keywords or something and just essentially memorize it, to be honest. And also I would ask the interviewee before we would go on camera together. I'd be like, okay, what are the main points you want to make? And then I would essentially memorize it. and then ask the questions so they could do all the talking. But now it's so much easier, and I'm so much more confident that I actually I do understand what they're saying. It's difficult for me to repeat it to someone else, but I can ask a question, an intelligent question, and have it answered back to me, if that makes sense.
It does. It totally makes sense because sometimes, like I've had like Mark Wilcox on the show and some really like deep technical individuals. And while I can totally follow along about what they're saying and then kind of like reference that to other things that I already know and kind of fill in the blanks,
Yeah.
it's still very difficult for me to sit there and say, I had a bunch of friends come up to me and be like, oh, so about that Mark Wilcox interview, I'm like, yeah, go watch it, like because I
Well,
I don't remember a lot.
it's crazy. I totally can relate to that. And I think something else that I love very much about the BSV world, I don't know, it potentially could be the other blockchain worlds as well, but the people I've interviewed and asked questions to are very patient with me. All of them. And none of them are like rolling their eyes like, oh my God, like you don't even know what you're talking about. And I remember it was actually Ryan X Charles. I asked him a question. I think I said return op instead of op return, like something like that. And
Right.
instead of like laugh or being like a real jerk about it, he just answered, he knew what I meant. And Craig has done this so many times for me, and I love him for it. But they won't be like, oh, you mean this, or like, oh, and they'll answer back and okay, op return is da, 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 da. It's so and I think that and Craig too, Craig especially, I should say, wants people to learn, right? And he understands that not everyone is at his level. And so he's happy for people to be learning and excited about the industry. And so are people, well, like Ryan X Charles was, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to get into that, but back when he was really, really good with educating people and being very patient, always answering email, oh, what's this? And Kurt, so many people are happy to do that, which is amazing.
Kurt has been another really big inspiration for me in this journey. He was actually the individual who got me started on the BSV path. Him and a good friend,
Really?
but my friend, he referred me over to Kurt and he was all like, go listen to this. And I remember watching a video where he did with a guy on like JCTV or something like that. And it was called like Bitcoin Mastercard puppeteers exposed or
Yes.
it was a great interview and I remember watching
Yeah.
that and thinking to myself, wow, everything that I thought I knew
Yeah.
being in the space for so long is just totally void. And I remember digging in and doing research and diving deep and realizing that a lot of the things that he said in that interview were true. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this means that Craig Wright really is Satoshi because
Mm-hmm.
before I was under the impression that maybe maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but that really
Yeah.
cemented to me that he was. And then I started watching it and listening, and I was like, wow, this makes
Mm-hmm.
so much sense. But I've always been in the back of my mind a little bit intimidated about meeting the guy because I'm like, is he gonna, but you've kind of quelled a lot of those fears, showing me that he's patient with you and he understands that not everybody's on his level of
Billion
thinking.
percent.
And so it makes me really look forward to getting to meet him and talk to him one day, and hopefully, you know, not sound like an idiot in front of him.
Well, he's been broken in by me. No, but I think where Craig gets prickly is if people are attacking him. But he's so happy to educate and to talk with people, students, anyone that he can identify as willing to learn, wanting to learn and understand. And I really find that in general, most people are like that. I mean, the same with the online gambling industry. Same, if you're everyone understands, and not these people that are up here, not everyone's going to be at that level, and so they need to help educate. But yeah, I think that there are some amazing resources that you can find online too. You mentioned like watching Kurt's interviews and things like this, and Joshua Hensley does an amazing job. um and when I was told about the situation with calvinair.com ceasing publications as an online gambling site, but that I had an opportunity to come over to CoinGeek.
Geek. Yeah.
The recommendation that Calvin made to me, in fact, was to take the BA or the Bitcoin Academy Introduction to Bitcoin, or the theory, or something like that. I can't remember the exact title of it. And I did it, and it was really, I mean, I'm very lucky that it was part of my job, so I could do it in the workday.
Right, right.
I mean, it was not easy, but I will say that suggestion of Calvin's was absolutely brilliant, because he knew that I was uncomfortable with the content when I was asked to come to CoinGeek events and things, when I didn't have time to study what was going on. I didn't know what I was talking about. But when you understand how, I mean, I'm not an expert by any means, but you read the white paper and you understand what it means, and you're watching some of these podcasts and all of this, it all becomes very clear. Then you can start reading so many things. Like oh my gosh, another author I just came across is Zemming, or Zem.
Okay.
Um, he Zem Gao, I think is his name. He's also very much involved in, I believe, the IEEE world and IPv6, and he's a real educated individual who writes brilliantly. And his blog, I just fell into this rabbit hole recently, just reading his perspective on so many things. I'm like, and since I have the foundation of the course from the Bitcoin Academy, and listening to Kurtz, listening to you, just listening to people in the space, interviewing people, yeah, you just start to pick up on things, and it becomes really, really clear. And this is why it's so obvious to us, which is what's going on. But all the other people, they don't spend the time doing this, which I can understand. It takes a lot of time.
Well, I'm
But it
curious,
makes
do
it so
you
clear.
Oh, totally. And I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was curious
Okay.
though, if you think maybe like your degree in psychology has helped you in being a reporter a little bit, and what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's helped, or
Yeah, I mean, I think any education is amazing in any subject, but I think perhaps just having an understanding of how people operate, and if you're coming across someone who is super nervous. I mean, this is maybe not in a psychology education. This is maybe just more intuition, or the personality that I have, because my general personality is I want everyone to be at ease and to have fun, and I don't like conflict at all. And so, yeah, it's the problem. I'm working on it. But yeah, so when I get someone beside me, especially if they're a bit nervous, or um maybe they're in a rush, or whatever, reading people and understanding how to manage them in that 5 minutes or half hour, whatever your time is, I think is really important. I think knowing what you're talking about is for sure a big piece of it. But you could probably get away with not knowing what you're talking about, as long as you know how to interact with the person.
Yeah.
And but that I think just comes along with practice of interviews with people, just reading body language and understanding how they're going to react when a camera comes into their face.
So when you first started working with Calvin with Dogs and everything, and you started doing the interviews and whatnot back then, like what was it that helped you, like, I guess, progress in that, just going from totally different field and then all of a sudden like, oh, I'm going to be in front of a camera a lot.
Oh God. If I send you some of the videos from 2009, you will die. Like, I'm just so nervous. Like, it's just repetition. And this is what Calvin told me. Because he used to do quite a bit of interviewing and on-camera work for the Bodog brand back in the day. And he explained to me the process he went through getting comfortable with that. And it is just repetition.
Would you
I did,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. Would you say that he was kind of like a mentor or like somebody that you looked up to as far as
For
like,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And I have like I he is a dear friend of mine, Calvin, over and we've we've worked together for so many years now, and I was friends with him before that even. And always anytime I had with him, it's like with Craig, you just learn stuff. It's like if you go because just I just love listening to his perspective on things, because you're just like, wow, that's because Calvin's brilliant too. I'm sure you probably know this as well. Absolute, such a smart person, so intelligent. He knows so much information, reads, just consumes so much info all the time. Um, and so when he said to me, he was like, you're going to be really good at this. You just need to practice. He's like, the content, which I did have the luxury of understanding the industry, not so much when I came to CoinGeek. I was like, whoa. But he's like, the content and the people. And so, he's like, people are going to be patient with you and you'll get much better at this over time. I know your personality. And so I was very, very lucky where I had someone who had the
Believed in you.
foresight, yeah, believed in me and who could identify this sort of talent, um, a very perceptive person. And so it did work out that way. And I was really thrown. It was baptism of fire. It was crazy. It took a couple of years, I'd say, because it's one thing to do a Zoom call or like this. It's another to have a bunch of cameras and lights and in a public place and things like this. It's really quite scary. I honestly, Freddie, when you come to Dubai, the next conference in London,
London.
if you watch some of the presenters who literally they'll light up a stage if they're talking and on stage or giving a presentation, they come to me for on the camera and it's like they're really nervous, like you just presented in front of 200 people or 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever the number is. It's scary, but once you do it over and over, it becomes like second nature, like talking to a person.
I think there's a little bit of difference about presenting on stage and then being directly in front of a camera
Totally.
because the lights can be so bright that it kind of like
Yeah.
shines away the audience. So you just kind of see a
Yeah.
bunch of bright lights and you know that there's people there, but you don't
Yeah.
quite see them. Whereas in front of a camera, it's a little awkward, right? I got
So it is.
I didn't realize how awkward it was going to be because, like you said, it's totally different from just a simple Zoom call. Because when we were
Yeah.
in Miami, Kurt's film crew um, shot the moment between Kurt and his
I
wife and
saw
I.
this. Yes, yes.
Yes, and that I was so nervous about that because they came by
Scary.
and they like set the whole thing
Scary.
up and they handed me the microphone and I was like, okay, I got this. I'm just gonna pretend I got this and I
Right?
went
No,
for
it's
it.
totally scary. Well, for me, I'm much less comfortable on stage. A lot of people will be, "Oh, you must be amazing delivering presentations or on stage," and I'm like, "No, it scares me. I can have a camera in my face, all day long." So it is a different skill set, and it does take practice for both of those different things in order to be comfortable with it. Um, but I think getting thrown in front of camera for the first time, it's really, I used to sweat. I would like panic before going to a conference. Now I'm like, bring it on, let's go. It's unbelievable. The
I
difference.
imagine for you, it's like, oh well, I'm going to hang out with a bunch of friends. I'm going to talk with a bunch of friends, and I'm going to have an amazing
Yes.
time, and then we're all going to go home and we're going to call it a day. So I
Yeah.
imagine for you, there's a little bit less stress now because you know the people, you know the industry,
Yes.
and there's a bit of comfortability
Exactly.
there now. So that's the level of
Yeah,
comfortability
and
that
it's
I
really,
aspire to.
it's, yeah, and as soon as, I think it's really helpful to actually be in person at events. I know we've had complications in the last few years with that, but it just changes the whole game when you meet people in person and you get to hang out with them, and you have like a beer together or whatever. It is so much fun, and I think for me, it took maybe about a year, I think, until I was comfortable with the content for the CoinGeek work that I do. But I did know a bunch of the people from the time when I was doing both brands, calviner.com and CoinGeek. So it was just always so fun to go to the events. I'm like, oh, here's Handcash and here's this and here, it's all these companies that I've been seeing, at least a couple times a year for the past 4 years or 5 years, whatever it is. So it makes it really fun. So I really hope that you can come to the London event, which is my stomping grounds. I'm so excited. London is the best city. It's going to be really pretty amazing, and to see everyone is going to be really spectacular. I really hope you can be there.
I've never been out of the US before.
No way.
Yeah, so I'm trying. I'm definitely shooting to get over there this next year. Like that is a goal, definite goal, because I want to be there. I want to meet you. I want to meet
Yes.
Calvin. I want to meet Jimmy. And I want to meet Craig. So just getting to meet individuals and then seeing friends and getting to hang out with Kurt and then watching everybody party. I was told that Craig likes to dance, and I would love to
Oh,
see him ham it up and have a good time. I think that would be pretty interesting to see a man of his with his knowledge like cutting loose and enjoying life. I
it
think
is so,
yeah.
yeah. It's really nice to see the human side of all these guys. Craig, honestly, that shocked me, but I knew Craig had that bug, because when I went to that famous Vancouver trip, we had lots of fun. Yeah, we had lots of dancing and fun nights out and things like that. So I think that really, it's just amazing to see the human side of people. Like I said, the same thing happens, in the little side chats at these conferences and things. See people's sense of humor, and it's really amazing. Um, and the vibe, it's the vibe. And I mentioned that I said to my cameraman, in 2012, I want to be a part of this Bitcoin world or whatever. That vibe that I felt then is now present with the BSV blogging world. I think the world that I was talking about in 2012 is morphed into something that I wouldn't want to be a part of. But it's the same vibe. I know every industry has, or there's negativity here and there or whatever, but in general, when you get together with all the people that are excited about the tech, it's really addictive. It's amazing. Yeah.
I
I'm
love it.
super lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I enjoy what you do for sure. And I look up to you and what you do. You make it look so
Oh, well,
effortless on stage and just interviewing people.
thank
So I've
you.
looked to you a lot to just try to, I'm like, where's her tips and tricks? Like, give me some of that knowledge. So that was one of the things that I was like, oh, I really need to ask her about that today, you know? But
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. It's because I love what I do. It's easy. It's easy when you love what you do. I'd have to say. It makes it much easier. Yeah,
well, Becky, hope you don't mind if I call you Becky.
that's
Um,
cool.
Um, I know that we've been chatting here for a while now. I've been really enjoying my time getting to chit chat with you, but I was curious, two things. If there was anything that you thought that we missed that you think that we should have touched on, and if so, what was that? Or what would that be? And then
Mhm.
second, well, let's just start with that one real quick.
Okay. I think the one thing I wanted to add is that when I was working on the Bodog brand side of things, this was only in the beginning of my time with Calvin. So this was in 2009, 2010, something like this. He had me doing some work on the forums, doing fact checking. And I think my title for that part of the work I was doing was fact checker. And so where I'm going with this is the negativity and the trolling that we see on Twitter now. And there are a lot of people that would attack the Bodog brand, that would attack Calvin personally. And this was, do you remember forums like like these online forums? Okay, so essentially it's like, the same idea as Twitter. So I would go on to the forum and be like, someone would be like, oh, Bodog stole this money from me. They didn't pay me out, or Calvin's a thief, or blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, okay, actually, this is, not true, whatever. Or, give me your information. I'll connect you with customer service. We'll sort out what's happening. So I was just going in there to calm the fire. So these guys then started attacking me. Oh my God. Da, da, da. I won't even say some of the names they used to call me. It's just really inappropriate stuff. Like, you must have a fat ass. I mean, ridiculous stuff. So Calvin's idea was, look, these guys, trust me, they're just behind their computers. And if you see them in person, they will not act this way. You just remember that. So his idea was to throw a party for them in Vegas. So I hosted a party in Vegas, invited these guys, basically I sent out some sort of communication being like, if you want to come, send me your email, blah, blah, blah. We called it a poster party, like forum, big people that post on a forum, basically poster party. So these guys showed up at the party and they all were wearing I think name tags with their handle or whatever. The very same people that said I had a fat ass, called me, Bodog Betty, Blowjob Becky, all these names, all these ridiculous, I could go on and on. They were starstruck by me. They wanted a picture with me. They wanted to sit next to me. They wanted to buy me a drink. They were like, oh my God, it's Becky. Oh my God. And I'm like, you're the same person that wrote all this nasty stuff. So it's like an anecdote kind of. So every time I see this nonsense on Twitter, people being so nasty and saying awful things, this person this person that, I'm like, don't forget, if you saw this person face to face somewhere, it would not be the same conversation at all. And to really just try to let it roll off the back, honestly. Because I learned that lesson firsthand. I mean, we don't have I guess we wouldn't want to throw a party for all these people. That would be a juicy event. But just to remember, just to try to ignore it. And if you start engaging or replying and getting involved, it's, your day is gone, right?
Yeah.
And it won't accomplish anything because they're not going to be like, oh, actually, you're right. Actually, all these things I've said, you're right now. So anyway, just ignore that stuff and try to focus on the good stuff is my piece of advice.
For sure. And it's
Believe me,
good
I've been there.
advice. It's good advice, especially with everything that's been going on inside and outside of the community. There's a lot of noise
Yeah,
sometimes, and we can get lost in that. So, like you said
totally.
earlier, leaving that bubble,
Yeah.
thinking, and it's good that we address it too, instead of sometimes I feel like other people just kind of shove it under the rug and say, oh, it's not
Yeah.
happening. But
Yeah.
the people that are paying attention, they may feel some type of way about it, and it is what it is. But yeah, I'm happy that we can at least address it and say, hey, it's all just noise, so don't listen. But I'm
Totally.
curious, as we wind things down here, what do you think is the catalyst or the number one thing that we're waiting on right now to really see a big jump in Bitcoin adoption? What is it that we're really missing right now that it feels like we're waiting on it?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think that while all the work that we're doing educating industries like the online gambling world and getting into esports and gaming and all this, I think all that is important in having people start up their applications and entrepreneurship and all of this is important. I don't think that this is maybe contrary to what some people say. A lot of people say it's the applications that are going to push things forward. But I do think that we really need the piece of enterprise solution level. I think the work that we are doing with the IPv6 and IEEE events, I think that's going to make a major difference. I think because we're going to be getting the attention of people that have huge followings, not in the crypto world or the blockchain world or whatever, but in the general world of technology, leaders in these spaces, that once they get it, I think that it'll be like a
ripple effect.
Ripple effect. That's what I was looking to say. Yeah, I really do think, and that has really only just kicked off. I think it feels like it's been a while because CoinGeek talks about it a lot and this sort of thing, but I want to say it's really just this year probably. And now that, we have events around the world again and all this kind of stuff, I think that with these sorts of events and people on our that get it, I don't want to say on our side, that sounds weird, but I think that it'll move a lot faster. And then, of course, having the applications and the startups and all of this is amazing, too. We need that as well at the grassroots level. But I think in order to make a huge worldwide impression, it's going to be people at these levels that are like way up here. That's what I would think. But all of it, we need all of it.
Like CEOs in major corporations, major industries, and just regular everyday sort of people who may or may not know anything about the crypto industry, or the industry that it's become.
I know, yeah.
Getting them to understand and sit down and have conversations with educated people about the situation and getting them to understand and spreading that. That's how I see things taking off. So it's cool to hear your perspective on that as well, like a domino or ripple effect happening.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there was anything else that I really wanted to ask. Really hope I'm not missing anything though. I know I was starting to get nervous there for a minute because the internet kept going in and out.
I know.
And
so typical.
And it was making me like lose my train of thought. I was like, wait. What was I gonna ask?
I know, it's so disruptive. I know, I hate that. No, I think we covered lots of great stuff, and I'm totally happy to chat anytime. So we missed that thing. We'll do it again.
I would love to. I would love to. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallet, blockchain, stablecoins, Metanet, the evolution of money. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin today, but what exactly is it? Learn the basics from experts. Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Bitcoin 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.
Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. Share this video with a friend, and also follow us on Twitter at BrittanyBits.